We are now live. Sound check. Audit, Finance, and Administration Committee meeting for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. Sound check.
Okay, and we are now live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for Audit, Finance, and Administration. And members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Any presentations and reports considered at this meeting are available on the city's website, and members of the public can contact the clerk's office to acquire documents in an alternate form. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to non-audible function during the committee meetings. Members are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. And members can submit another request to speak if they require more time to ask questions or comments. I'm noting that quorum is present, and this morning we have no ceremonial activities. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to today's agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's one added discussion item, item 10.3, which is the Governance Review Subcommittee Report 22-002 from May 30th.
Thank you for that. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Russ Powers. Electronic vote, please.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. And we'll move on to, are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, may I please have an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of May 19th, 2022, moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Powers. No questions on it. Electronic vote, please.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. There's no correspondence or communications today and no delegations requests. We're going to go right into consent items. 7.1 is disconnecting from work policy HUR 22005 at Citywide, and Laura Fontana is the staff person overseeing this. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the consent item? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Powers. Are there any questions to this particular? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, just a question to Laura. Laura,
Yeah. I'm just waiting. I'm just seeing where she is. Hang on.
Oh,
She's in attendance here at committee, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. She's in council chambers, sir. Go ahead.
okay. So Laura, I think what this is that you're not expected to respond to email or the city business on weekends or evenings, but you still can do it if you wish to. Is that correct?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct, Councillor. The policy is intended just to provide additional flexibility in work arrangements and ensure that employees do not necessarily feel compelled to respond after hours. But that's not to say that they can't or won't, but it's just in order to strike a better balance in terms of work-life balance and ensure that employees are not feeling overwhelmed with the expectations after work hours.
Because I could tell personally, I do a lot of catch up on emails through weekends, and I think our staff do too, because I get replies from them almost as quick as I send them. So I want to make sure that they can still do that if they so wish, but they don't have to. And I think everybody expects they don't have to if they don't want to. But most of our employees are incredibly dedicated to their job and they want to stay current. And I don't want to discourage them from doing that if they so wish. So, and on the hours of work and eating periods, are we at risk of being in violation of our policy with committee and council meetings where we don't take breaks and we take very short lunch breaks? Are we required to give our staff breaks during the day when we have these all-day meetings like yesterday?
So through you, Madam Chair, the ESA requires a 30-minute lunch break every 5 hours. There is some latitude, particularly for management level positions, but generally speaking, it would be a good practice. But the ESA exempts management level positions from those requirements, but it would indeed be a good practice.
Okay, so by management, that would be our managers, directors, and GMs then, would it?
Through the chair, yes, supervisors and above.
Okay, so by going straight through the day, we're not in we're in compliance with the ESA.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, that's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have, in chat, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. So, Chair, my question would be to Laura. How do we ensure that staff feel comfortable enough to say no to weekend and after hour communications? Because there is, in the government world, a bit of a power imbalance. And so there will be an inclination for staff when responding to counselors, I got to do this because he's a counselor, she's a counselor. And I'm cognizant of that, and I don't want it to be the reason why they feel they have to respond. I get it if there's an emergency, but you know, fixing a pothole, tree trimming, and all the things that we do as constituent assistant, I'm just concerned about that. So can you just comment on that? How do we ensure that they have that knowledge and comfort that they can say, you know what, it's been a long week, I'm not working on the weekend?
So through the chair, the policy outlines the terms, and it's very clear that employees should not feel compelled to respond to communication primarily after hours. The policy also describes the opportunity for an employee and their leader to have that understanding. So I would suggest, Councillor, that conversation needs to happen, particularly if there is that degree of uncomfortableness in working after normal business hours. It is a policy, and employees can certainly contact Human Resources where they feel that they're in violation of the policy and the expectations are in violation of the policy. The policy is also very clear that there should be no expectation and not part of the evaluation of an employee, and certainly not part of their performance criteria or evaluation for not wanting to respond or work beyond the normal business hours. So there is opportunity for employees to refer any violations to the policy. But that is going to that responsibility will also be on the employee to raise those issues and concerns either with their leader or with Human Resources. I don't know if Jeanette, if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Laura, through the chair. So one of the things following you receiving this report today is I'm sending a note out to all staff at the city and giving them that permission and explaining the policy. We're also sending a note out to all the directors requesting that they have at their team meetings have that discussion about this policy, what it means, have a clear consensus of what an emergency is, because everyone has a different definition of what an emergency is, so that there's a common understanding that in this type of work setting, because our work is all different across the corporation, is that in this type of situation, this would be considered an emergency, this would not. And have those discussions with their team so staff can ask those types of questions to get clarity. And you know, this policy was brought in, based on the communication out, but our work lives and our personal lives really melted together in the pandemic for many staff, especially working from home. And it gets messy. And we've all been working flat out because of the pandemic, because there was the pandemic as well as all the regular day-to-day. And it's kind of resetting the balance and expectations. I appreciated Councillor Ferguson's question about the ESA, that even though it's maybe not a requirement for management staff, I think it's a good practice for all of us to take a 30-minute break and grab some food and do what we need to do and come back a bit fresh after 30 minutes. You will hear in my presentation, you're getting a bit of a heads up on my annual performance review about the whole issue of human resources. It is the top item for all the CAOs in a recent survey by Strategy Corps. Never in the history of the survey has human resources come out on top. And it's around people being burnt out, mental health issues in general, but also with retirees and people reevaluating their priorities with the pandemic. We are in steep competition for talent, both to keep them and to recruit them. And so I think these types of conversations about human resources, policies, and practices are going to be really, really important on a go-forward basis for our talent retention and attraction. Sorry for the long speech there.
No, that's fine. Chair, the second question that I would have is with regards to Appendix A, item number 9 on page 204. And my concern is that we are implementing a policy and basically indicating that it's okay to disconnect, it's okay to have a family life as well as a work life. But then in this document, it says employees should not be penalized for disconnecting during non-work hours when it is not a job expectation. That leaves the implication that they could be penalized. And my suggestion would be that that would say shall not be penalized. And you need to make it very clear that the policy is our employees will not be penalized if they choose to disconnect in their non-work hours. And I think that's important. If we're going to talk about it, we better walk up with it too. And so the policy has to be consistent with our intentions. And I don't know if that, Madam Chair, if that needs to be a formal amendment to change that because it's in a policy document, but I feel strongly about it.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Is there a comment back from staff with regards to that concern? I'm seeing it in front of me myself.
So yes, if I can, through you, Madam Chair, the intention of the language in the policy, Councillor Clark, is for those positions where indeed it is a job expectation to reply to work-related issues after hours. It's not intended to be in circumstances where the expectation could or could not be there. It's more relevant to those jobs where after hours is a requirement for engaging in work-related activities. That's perhaps we can provide more clarity on that item, but that was the intention for item 9 under the principles.
And I guess, Madam Chair, the challenge is this document will be looked at maybe 2-3 years from now, and they're going to think that they can be penalized because that's the implication of that statement. And I don't think that's the intention. So, Madam Chair, I think what I need to do is move a motion to replace the word should with shall in point 9 of page 204, the Appendix A, if there's a seconder.
I have Councillor Brenda Johnson's prepared to second that. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So you're putting that on the floor. I did have Councillor Wilson, though. Councillor Wilson, I'm just going to ask, is it to the amendment or is it to the whole report?
It's to the whole report.
Okay, so we'll hold off on that amendment, Councillor Clark, and allow Councillor Wilson to move ahead with the questions on the whole report. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the comments from the previous speaker. And I was going to ask through the chair for the city manager to speak to the matter and to ask how the language and the intent of this would be shared with staff, and very pleased to hear that she will be doing that. I think I am as guilty as charged of doing what Councillor Ferguson identified, is trying to catch up on emails during the weekend. I have been trying to make sure I have a clear header on my emails, not to be opened. Please don't look at this, but sometimes I fail in that regard. I think the responsibility begins with us also, that we change our language. When we use words like extremely dedicated, very responsive, committed, when an employee responds on the weekend, that is not a measure of their value. They can be, and I think it is in our self-interest to ensure that that's not the terms that we apply when they do that. They can be a very dedicated parent. They can be a dedicated volunteer on the weekend. They can do absolutely nothing and be a quality, good serving public employee. So I would hope that we lead by example and ensure that our language is in keeping with the intent of this policy. To City Manager's point on the Strategy Core report, yes, it was overwhelming that item surfaced when it did, and I suspect it's not going to go away, if only because over the next 30 to 40 years, demographics are such that we are going into a period of supreme labor shortage, in which the public realm is going to have to compete to attract and retain talent. And if we are, as a corporation, not prepared to provide a work environment that enables that work-life balance, that respects the counsel and advice, also guilty as charged, offered by public servants, then we are not going to be successful in retaining that talent, and it's going to impair our success as a city. So I am fine with the motion. I'm certainly encouraging of our city manager to have these discussions, and I thank her for her intention to do so. And I think I would implore, and it begins with me, ensuring that the language that I use in describing the work of public servants is such that I do not expect them to work on the weekend unless they are charged specifically as part of their job to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So that was a comment. I will, before we put Councillor Clark's amendment on the floor, I'd just like to put a comment forward. I can relinquish the chair. I'm not sure who's vice chair. Oh, it's Arlene Vanderbeek, who's away today due to a death in the family. My comment is the same as Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Wilson. I too have had issues over the years in wanting to clear stuff off my desk, at the slow times on a weekend or a night, and then getting replies back from staff. So I certainly encourage that they're aware that it is not their responsibility to get back to me immediately. I have actually put in some emails. I do not expect a reply back until Monday. But I appreciate that this policy is, in place, and it will give some peace of mind to the staff as well, that, we respect they have families and they have lives, and they deserve to have that quality time with them. So thank you for that. I'll go now back to Councillor Clark on your amendment to the motion, to the direction. Councillor Clark.
Yes, Chair. I don't have any further comments on the motion. Does everyone know exactly where we are then?
Yeah, it's the change to item 9, page 2 of the Schedules A, that it's not be changed from shall to, or should to shall not, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So that's been moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor, electronic vote, please.
So to the chair, Councillor Ferguson, I believe has a question before we vote.
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Ferguson. I flipped to vote. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm okay with the way it is. I think it's pretty clear. I don't want to get to the point where personally, if I have a bunch of emails backed up, it stresses me. So I'd rather go in on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning and clean them out. I don't want our employees to think if they have that same feeling that they want to get their inbox cleared out and so it gives them some stress relief. I don't want them to think that they're going to be penalized for that. I think that the intent of this whole policy is say you don't have to, but if you want to, that's okay. And so I just worry we're going over the top. So I'm perfectly okay with 9 the way it reads. It's really with the same thing, the amendment, but I just don't want to discourage our employees who are love what they do and want to get stress off them by responding to some emails on the weekend that they're going to get penalized for doing that, because that's not the intent, I don't believe.
Thank you. So I don't believe the change will affect that either, Councillor. So the amendment's on the floor and electronic vote, please.
And that vote carries 5-1.
Thank you, everyone. So on the main motion as amended now, please move. I think we had movers and seconders already, Madam Clerk, to put it on the floor originally.
Yes, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Powers.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Powers, was that a thumbs up? Sorry, I missed it. And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you, everyone. Going to move on now to, we have no staff presentations, no public hearings. Discussion item 10.1, extension of Employee and Family Assistance Program contract, HUR 22006, Citywide. Again, Laura Fontana. Can I have a move and a second to put the item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Power, second by Councillor Ferguson. Are there any questions to this report?
Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, I can't
to
see
the chair, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. To the report, through the chair to staff, is it appropriate for me to ask the cost of the extension for until July 1st, 2023 for the sole source?
So through you, Madam Chair, there's no additional cost as a result of the extension. We'll just simply go out to market this summer and for renewal in January for 5-year renewal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I misread the report then. It's a non-competitive procurement and we're extending the contract just because staff, understandably, we're busy with matters related to COVID, and the extension is until July 1st. So that extension, I'm sorry, was part of the original cost put in? Sorry.
So through you, Madam Chair, the current contract with Homewood Services was for a 5-year period from January of 2016 to the end of 2020. And then we extended it an additional 18 months with the city manager's approval. At this point, we want to, because of COVID and other related challenges, as well as the concern of changing provider during the pandemic and changing services wasn't anything that we were in favor of. So we're simply extending the contract for another 6 months, potentially a year, but our intention is to renew it for an effective date of January 1st, 2023. So there's no additional cost other than the current contract terms with Homewood Services.
Through the chair, is this a competitive field when we get to that point? Just curious. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, we will be issuing an RFP. It will be a competitive process.
No, thank you. Just to clarify my question, is it to your with your experience, Executive Director Fontana, is the field of the provision of these types of services, is it a competitive field itself?
Through the chair, it is somewhat. There's not a lot of providers, particularly for a larger organization, but there are a few providers indeed, and it would be a competitive process.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone?
So Councillor Clark as well.
I apologize because I can't see it from here. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. Is there a possibility of doing a month-to-month extension rather than stating a year?
So through the chair, I may call on Dave Lindeman to respond to whether or not we can extend it on a month-to-month basis and what that may mean from a contract provisions perspective. My recommendation would be just to simply extend it to the end of the year and then go through the competitive process so we're not vulnerable in terms of changing providers and having that ability to go through the RFP process, which would likely take us to the end of this year. I don't know if Dave is available.
David, yeah.
Yeah, so just through the chair to add to what Laura was saying. So we basically will be doing to the end of the year with this request with Homewood Health. And just for the previous councillors' questions as well too. So this is already in the budget, so this doesn't need additional cost that we have. This is already council approved budget that we're doing here. Rather than doing it month to month, because it would take probably 3 months to turn around our RFP at a minimum. As Laura said, we'll try to do it by the end of the year. Hopefully we will get it done by the end of the year. Not for any unforeseen circumstance that may derail us on that, so that we would have a new provider in place by January the 1st for our next probably 5-year contract as well.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Okay, with that, are there no further questions from anyone in the gallery and City Hall? Seeing none, so it's been put on the floor. Electronic vote, please.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10.2 is the follow-up audit, transportation operations inventory audit, fraud and waste investigation, and follow-up to audit report 2013 to 2017, Public Works Traffic Inventory, AUD 22005, Citywide. Charles Brown in attendance. May I have a mover and a seconder to put this item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Powers. And so if there is any discussion on the report regarding appendices A and B, we're fine. But if we need to deal with Appendix C, then we have to, it's confidential. We have to go in camera, so we'll have to defer. So are there any questions on the appendices A and B? Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I would like to hear from the auditor. And I would like to go in camera on C when the time comes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to hear from the auditor in open session now?
Yes, please.
On a brief, thank you. Auditor Brown, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, Charles Brown, City Auditor. This report is a follow-up that relates to the status of recommendations arising from our 2020 report on inventory management in transportation operations. The recommendations that were brought into that report were a combination of new recommendations as well as those that were carried over from an audit that we did in 2013, as well as an investigation of missing copper wire and a review of site security. There were 17 new recommendations that were made in the 2020 report, of which 8 are complete. 9 recommendations were carried over from our 2013 report, of which 3 are complete. 4 recommendations specifically pertaining to the control of valuable inventory, such as copper wire, are in progress. And finally, all 4 recommendations pertaining to the site security are complete. Some general comments on the work that's been done by transportation operations since the audit was completed in 2020. A new senior project manager of inventory management, that position was created and filled, and transportation operations has developed a number of standard operating procedures to address the recommendations and has implemented key performance indicators. We concluded that the standard operating procedures are well written with good internal controls, but more work is needed to ensure that standard operating procedures are followed. In addition, the site security recommendations, they have all been completed to our satisfaction. As to the controls over the valuable inventory, there's still some issues relating to ensuring that this stock is in a secure location and is spot checked periodically and reconciled to records, which transportation operations is addressing.
Thank you. Can I ask, in terms of the in-camera closed session report, why is it that is being recommended that we discuss it in camera? What's the rationale for the in-camera report?
Through the chair, the rationale is that those are security recommendations. The original recommendations, when presented, were presented in confidence because they would jeopardize the security of the site if it were known what the weaknesses were. And so that's the reason. And I'd like to say that all those recommendations were completed to our satisfaction.
Thank you. And are there any recommendations that are outstanding or recommendations that management perhaps did not agree with you and went in a different direction?
Management agreed with all the recommendations. It's just a question of implementing them fully.
And that's why it's taken time from 2020 to where we are now, because they've been trying to implement them.
Exactly.
Thank you. I still have questions in camera when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, I've just had my thing on mute. Okay, so any other questions on the report itself? That's public. Then at the appropriate time, I believe, Madam Clerk, should we continue on or do we go in camera now?
No, to the chair, we can defer consideration until after closed session. We'll just need a motion on that.
So can I have a motion then moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson to defer item 10.2 until the in-camera portion is addressed. Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10.3 is the Governance Review Subcommittee Report 22-002, May 30th, 2022. Staff in attendance will be Mike Zagaric, Brian McMullen, and Janet Pilon. May I have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Powers, second by Councillor Ferguson. And are there any questions or comments with regard to this report before us? I see nothing in chat. I see no hands that I can tell. So it's been moved and seconded on the floor. Then I'll ask to go to electronic vote, please. Councillor Ferguson. Thank you, sir. Go ahead. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Ferguson? Can't hear you.
Thank you. I forgot to hit the unmute. Apologize for that. So item 1, I have trouble with because it's eliminating the $100 deposit that complainants to the Integrity Commissioner have to put down, but which is fully refundable once the Integrity Commissioner deems it to be non-vexatious or trying to think of the other word. I've got it written down here. Frivolous. So it's not, once Integrity Commissioner determines it's not frivolous or wasn't vexatious, they'll refund the $100 to them. And that's to put some controls to make sure, I would believe that the same person keeps filing complaints to the Integrity Commissioner to draw the, and to seek media attention, because in my experience, every time someone like that for political reasons. And if you look back to history, most of the complaints to the Integrity Commissioner were politically driven. And so it discouraged us from the same individual repeatedly putting these complaints to the Integrity Commissioner because it starts to get expensive then. But $100 is not a lot of money to put together. If it's a legitimate claim, they get the money back. And if you can't afford the $100, and if they got some people who are like-minded, they can, 5 of them could put in $20 each. So I don't think it's an instrumental amount. I know the Integrity Committee or the Ombudsman suggested we shouldn't be charging this. However, that's because somebody complained, and we can all speculate who it was that complained to the Ombudsman. But they have no authority over us in our policies. All they can do is recommend. I think it's something that's worked well over the years. So I can't support this because of that particular item 1. And I don't know whether you want to split out item 1, although it looks like it's the only one on the report today. I will not support the elimination of the $100 deposit that's put down until it's passed the test of being non-vexatious or frivolous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's actually one of 2 items on the report, so we can separate that for the vote. I now have Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I guess I have a slightly different perspective. I can acknowledge that we as councillors might have a different perspective because we come from a class where we're making $100 and some odd thousand a year and money isn't a concern for us. I can tell you that in the last 2 years, I have heard from many residents in my community where they're barely keeping their heads above water. Some are sinking. They don't have enough money. And so to suggest that residents in our community need to pay $100 to bring forth a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner, when the Integrity Commissioner already has the authority to review the complaint, and if it is vexatious or frivolous, they dismiss it and explain it. They also have the ability to mediate between the councillor and the complainant to find reasonable compromises, and they have done that. I have fundamental problems with this. It's like if you were going to call the police on someone and then the police said, well, you need to pay us $100 before we'll investigate. That's not how we operate in the Canadian political circle. And yes, the Ombudsman can't force us, but the Ombudsman has much more experience in this regard than many of us do. So the advice that we received was that it was undemocratic to charge $100 for people wanting to raise a complaint through a code of conduct. And I believe that that is an accurate description of what it is. It is undemocratic. People are wanting to come forward with a complaint, and it could be a legitimate complaint, may not be a legitimate complaint, but there shouldn't be a fee attached, because the Integrity Commissioner has the right, and they have exercised it to determine whether or not it's frivolous or vexatious, regardless of the $100. And if they're going to do an investigation, they proceed with the investigation. So I see no value added for charging $100. What I see is a penalty for charging $100 to residents to raise a code of conduct complaint. And so I continue to support this motion. I think it's the proper change, and I think it should have been done a long time ago, quite candidly. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I see no other speakers on my chat. So we'll separate the vote then, as Councillor Ferguson wishes. So on the report before us, item 1, Just trying to follow through, sorry, so I had the paperwork. So on item 1, electronic vote, please.
So just mover and a
Sorry.
seconder maybe on both items then?
Did we not have a mover and a second to put it on the floor, Madam Clerk?
On the report as a whole, yeah, I'm happy to use the same ones, but Councillor Ferguson was the seconder on item 1. I'm not sure that he
Okay,
wishes to
thank
be
you.
the seconder.
So we'll have a change the mover and a second. Then who moved it? Councillor?
Councillor Powers moved it.
Councillor Powers, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson, then to put it on the floor, electronic vote on item 1.
And that vote carries 5-1.
Thank you. And item 2 then, same mover and seconder.
And the vote should be up now. And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. And on the well, we don't have to vote on the whole report. That's fine. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, that is correct.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to move on now to motions. We have the City Enrichment Fund budget request that's before us. I'm just going to go into there. Here we go. Councillor Johnson, would you wish to introduce your motion?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay? I've put my headset on.
Yep.
Thank you. I don't have a seconder for this. If I can get a seconder, please, that would be great. I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Pearson. So whereas the City Enrichment Fund is an overall name for the City of Hamilton's municipal investment in a wide range of program areas that support city strategic plan, whereas the fund comprises 6 program areas: agriculture, arts, communities, culture and heritage, community services, environment, sports and active lifestyles, with funding streams and categories. And whereas the last budget increase to the City Enrichment Fund was approved in 2019 and brought a total budget allocation of $6,888,340. And whereas in 2022, requests from applicants totaled $9,858,419. Total value of eligible requests based on the 2022 applications totaled $8,110,633. Funding allocation was capped at $6,088,340, or 75% of the total request. And so therefore be it resolved that an increase to the City Enrichment Fund be forwarded for consideration to the 2023 budget submission. And if I could speak to that, please.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. So as the chair for the City Enrichment Fund, since COVID has hit, we have had a lot of programs that have sort of pulled back a little bit on their programming, but we've also had so many innovative programs that have come forward because of COVID. And I don't see them going away after COVID is up and lifted, because the popularity of these programs have been so good, and especially with the mental health, especially with the social services. So all we're asking is that we send this discussion to the 2023 budget deliberations for the new council of the day to take a good hard look at whether or not we are sufficiently funding this department. And I seriously believe we are not, because as you saw by the whereases, we're like $2.1 million short of all the eligible programs coming forward. So I would appreciate your support. It's to send to the 2023 budget deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Any questions or comments to that?
Councillor Clark and Councillor Powers.
Yeah, timelines, I'm trying to match it. Thank you, Councillor Clark, sir.
Thank you. So can I ask, I'm trying to get a handle on the applicants. We're capped at $6 million. Once an applicant is receiving funding from the city, do they continue to receive this funding as long as they're requesting it? Or do we set term limits? They're going to do a certain program within a certain time frame, and then they'd have to reapply?
If I can respond to that, please, Chair.
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm not sure if Morgan or Mimi John is online, but I can tell you that the bulk of our funding is going to legacy projects. Legacy projects such as Festival of Friends and Super Crawl, all your social programs, just the neighbor to neighbor. So a lot of them are legacy type programs that have been ongoing that still meet the criteria and have been depending on the city funds to continue their programming. But I hope Mimi John or Morgan Stahl is available, and I don't see any one of them on.
If I could jump in through the chair.
Thank you.
Jeanette Smith, City Manager. I know Mimi John is on vacation, so she's not here. I've just sent a text to Morgan Stahl. I know she's in the office today to see if she could log in or come in. So if you could just wait one moment. Thank you. And she is on now.
Thank you, Morgan. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. So you got the question?
I did not get the question,
Nope.
but I just got a note that said to join the meeting. So,
okay. Councillor Johnson, did you want to reiterate the concern and the question to her?
Councillor Clark has the floor, but Morgan, just to let you know, our motion came forward to the FNA about the increase of the funding. So maybe that'll help with the context.
Okay. That's helpful context. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, my apologies. Go ahead, sir.
No problem. I was trying to understand the definition of a legacy project, and it sounds like it's a project where once we agree to fund, we continue to fund it as long as they want to continue running the program, regardless of any competitive process. So I'm trying to understand how many projects or applicants are in that ballpark that we're kind of locked in, regardless of our intention over time to see them become more self-sufficient themselves. It seems like we just continue to pay.
Through the chair to Councillor Clark, and perhaps I would invite Councillor Johnson as the chair to add anything as well. It is based on our funding rationale, which our funding rationale changes year over year based on the number of applicants, the way applicants have scored, in addition to whether or not they have been funded from the city in the past. It's not, the legacy projects are not in perpetuity, that we fund them regardless of score or application. But it does play a factor in the weight of the overall application as we look at applications in two different areas. So we look at returning and we look at new.
And so how many new applicants were approved versus the legacy applicants of the $6 million?
So for the 2022 funds, sorry, I can pull that up. I just wasn't aware that this was on the agenda today. So I just need to pull up some of that information, and then I'm happy to provide an answer for you.
Well, we can defer this item to the next AFNA so that we can get that information.
I was going to respectfully ask Councillor Johnson, would you like to
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I put this on a notice of motion, and it can stay on as a notice of motion, and that's fine.
Thank you. So we'll make sure that gets put on the next agenda. Thank you, Morgan, for stepping in.
It's Madam Chair, I think it's on the agenda as a motion, so we would
need to defer it. Yes.
So we need to defer to the next AFNA.
So Johnson?
Yes, and can I also respectfully ask that Monique Garwood be also on the call as well, because it was Monique and Morgan and Mimi that helped me to devise this motion. So I think all three would be beneficial to have at the next meeting. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And I apologize for not having the information prepared.
Councillor Pearson, could I ask my question, please?
Councillor Powers, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. So my question, and perhaps it will form part of the response when you come back, is when will the terms of reference for the CEF be referred? I recall being, involved with the committee for quite a number of years when we went through the current iteration of terms of reference and eligibility and funding envelopes and that. I believe there was to be a review of the program on I forget whether it was a 5 or a 10-year program. I don't need the answer now. Perhaps you can include that when it comes back to AF&A at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I really declare my support for the motion now. Fine with the deferral. In the motion, in the information that will be forthcoming, if we could include, I know for artists and art organizations, often at the city here, we talk about inflation and the cost of supplies. If there could be a measure of how the Enrichment Fund, particularly for working artists, has kept pace with the rate of inflation, I would be grateful for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the motion that was on the floor has been deferred. Madam Clerk, so we'll just leave it at that. Do we need to vote for the deferral?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do. Okay. So I'll just need a mover and a seconder.
Moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Clark, please. Electronic vote. Thank you.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you, everyone. Now we're going on. We have no notices of motion. We there's no general information, other business before us. May I have a motion then to, there's private and confidential report of May 19th, 2022, closed session minutes. May I have a mover and a second to approve the closed session minutes of May 19th, 2022, moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Johnson. And seeing no questions to it, electronic vote, thumbs up for Councillor Powers.
So my apologies to the chair. Councillor Ferguson wasn't in attendance at the last meeting. So if we can have just a different mover.
Moved by Councillor Powers, second by Councillor Johnson. Thank you for that clarification.
And the vote is up. Sorry, Councillor Powers, I didn't see if you were thumbs up. Thank you.
Yes, he was. Thank you.
Sorry about that. And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you. And now everyone, so we're going to go back to item 10.2. I think it was AUD 22005. This was deferred that we deal with Appendix C in camera. So let me see. May I please have a mover and a second to move into closed session pursuant to Section 9.1 subsection A of the City Procedural Bylaw 21-021 as amended in Section 239.2 subsection A of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended as the subject matter pertains to the security of the property of the municipality or local board. Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Powers. Electronic vote please to go in camera.
Madam Clerk, just while they're doing the vote, I have to join a Conservation Authority meeting. I just got a text on it, so I have no questions in camera, so I'm going to be leaving the meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Councillor Powers was a thumbs up. Thank you.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going into closed session. Members of the public are advised that during the closed session portion of the meeting, the live stream will broadcast a closed session in progress screen. The broadcast will resume when the closed session portion of the meeting is complete. Before we move into closed session, I'd ask all members of the public to please now exit the WebEx meeting. Thank you, as well as any staff that are not directly related to this in-camera item. Also, please exit the WebEx meeting, and councillors, you'll have to go into the closed session section of your eScribe and make sure that you're in a secured room. Thank you.
And we are now live.
Thank you, everyone. So we're back on item 10.2 that was deferred until we went in camera. We have dealt with that in camera. So on item 10.2 is the follow-up audit, transportation operations inventory audit, fraud and waste investigation, and follow-up to audit report 2013 to 2017, Public Works traffic inventory, AUD 22005 citywide. We did have a move and a seconder originally, Madam Clerk. Do you want that, or do you want to wish a new one?
We did, but Councillor Ferguson is no longer with us, and he was the mover.
So I'll ask that it be moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Powers, and it's on the floor. Recorded vote, please. Electronic vote. Oops, I'm not. Sorry. I have to be back in open session. I forgot to do that. There we go. Okay, now I am. There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. I see your thumb.
Okay.
And that vote carries 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, this ends our meeting. May I please have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Powers, second by Councillor Wilson. All in favor, electronic vote, please. Thumbs up for Councillor Powers.
No problem. And that vote carries 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.